Today we observe International Holocaust Day. That is Yom HaShoah. January 27th was chosen because on this day in 1945, Russian troops accidentally stumbled upon and opened the gates to Auschwitz, the world's most dreadful concentration camp and mass murder site. For years, the world has paused for a moment to reflect on the evil undertaking of the Nazi enterprise at Auschwitz, one that converged the commerce of genocide, the politics of genocide, the linguistics of genocide, and the methodology of murder. In the past, for decades, this has been a day to mourn. Today, we don't just mourn, we also warn. We know a vast civilian and militarized effort is underway in many nations to once again destroy the Jews. Today, Jews are being pressured and tormented out of their homes in the civilized world. Many are immigrating to Israel. Israel will not be destroyed. The Jewish people will not be destroyed. We are pushing back forcefully with every fiber to educate, affiliate, legislate, and prosecute. We are determined that never again becomes not just a moment for tears, but the rallying call to overcome our fears and become fierce in our defense. That's my message. Both never again and no way, not again. To help us grasp more, I've invited several great minds to add their voices. Please listen to their very brief but powerful and inspiring statements. And now for one of our most important voices on the entire ethics of the question at hand, we go to Faye Lincoln, author of Values That Shape the World. Faye, what is your thought?
Thank you, Edwin. My parents were in Auschwitz during the last year of the war, and they were lucky enough to have survived. In May of 2025, I visited Poland and Auschwitz-Birkenau. I was horrified. 1.1 million Jews have been murdered in these two camps. Yet the tour I was on focused on the history of the Poles who had died in the labor camp. The camp tour guides overseen by the Polish government were whitewashing the history of the Jews during the Holocaust. We saw meticulous lawns and whitewashed barracks all around us. A small crematorium where Poles and Romanian professionals, educators, and alleged political enemies of the Nazis were imprisoned and died as slaves. I empathize with those who died. But where were the 1.1 million Jews housed or murdered? Certainly not in this pristine camp. After 2.5 hours of the tour guide minimizing our history, we finally arrived in Birkenau. Here were the ramshackle barracks where the Jews had lived, worked, and died. And yet the guide spent only 20 minutes covering its history. We did not visit the ruins of the crematoriums. The guides brushed over this because they'd been torn down by the Nazis as if they'd never existed. The guides told us they had to remain objective. Whether it's the far right in Eastern European nations or political Islam in the Middle East, the European Union, and America, groups are rewriting history to minimize, negate, or deny the Holocaust. The rise in anti-Semitism is linked to the impact of revisionist history believed by those ignorant enough or malicious enough to dehumanize the Jewish people. Never again.
Well, your comments remind me, and they're so prescient, your comments remind me, Faye, that you warn about being erased from our own history at a time when the National Education Association is rewriting the definition of Holocaust to exclude Jews. So many others are now rewriting the definition of Holocaust to include everyone, and your comments couldn't have been delivered in a more important fashion. So it is my pleasure to introduce a muscular voice for the Jewish people, especially Jewish students. I now call upon the Executive Director of Hillel at USF, that's the University of Southern Florida in Tampa, Sylvie Finesmith, and she is going to deliver her message. Sylvie, please take the screen.
Thank you, Edwin. So I just want to speak on the fact that what we're seeing right now isn't new, but to us it's become newly acceptable. Anti-Semitism has come back into public life louder and more shameless than it's been in decades. Sometimes it calls itself anti-Zionism. Sometimes it hides behind conspiracy theories or academic language. Sometimes it openly calls for the destruction of our beloved Eretz Yisrael. But let's be clear. This is the same ancient hatred, just wearing new clothing. And what so many people find shocking, especially on our college campuses, is our warning sign. What happens on college campuses does not stay on college campuses. Ideas do not disappear. When students graduate, they enter our institutions, our workplaces, and our public life. Be pragmatic. Know that this is a numbers game. History has shown us that when anti-Semitism is tolerated, it spreads. And that means no Jew, not a single one of us, has the luxury of sitting this out. Each of us has a role to play. We respond in the ways we're able, through education, leadership, advocacy, generosity, presence, and above all, courage. We are living in the strongest moment for Jewish people in over 2,000 years. We have Israel, we have sovereignty, we have the IDF, we have an American president and administration that stands with Jews locally and globally. But strength does not mean safety, and it must never lead to complacency. This moment calls on all of us to stand up, to speak clearly, and act together. We've survived far worse with far less, and now is the time to respond.
Sylvie, that was such a penetrating and, I might add, inspiring statement. I would like to observe that when you say what starts on the campus doesn't stay on the campus, history recalls that most of the genocides of the past 200 years have started at the university level. And in fact, so much of what the Nazis did was academically underpinned and in fact started at the university level. Thank you very much, Sylvie. Now, you've heard from lots of leaders, thought leaders, but we thought it'd be important to also hear from just an ordinary citizen who is concerned with the state of the world today and where it's going. I'd like to introduce Dr. Bruce Blank from Ohio, who's going to lend us his comments about Yom HaShoah. Take the camera, Bruce.
Thank you, Edwin. I could enumerate and describe the various stages of a Holocaust and how very far the world has progressed down that list. However, I think our listeners are very aware of most of these examples. Now we must act. We must act for ourselves and our children, as well as for the memories of our parents and grandparents that lived and died through the Holocaust. The law of genocide adopted by the international community after the atrocities of World War II criminalizes the, open quote, intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group, unquote. International genocide tribunals have long held that there can be no mass persecution without the poisoning of the mind of society with hate speech. This is why incitement is a specified crime of genocide. The tribunals have also held that euphemisms and catchphrases are as criminal and are recognized as outright calls to kill. This is why chanting for an intifada or from the river to the sea are included under the definition of genocide, because these are the verbal steps required prior to physical harm and killing.
Thank you, Bruce, and it's so important that you've chosen to zero in on the predicate to all the killing, persecution, and destruction action in its many forms, economic, social, and of course physical, with your comments about incitement. Thank you very much. And now we go to Ken Abramowitz. And Ken has been able to marry the concerns about the Holocaust with the political, socio-economic factors, the author of The Multi-Front War in its many editions. Ken, what do you say on Yom HaShoah to the world?
Well, I want to keep in context this very important day in this event in context of 3,500 years of history, which I'm going to explain in 1 minute. Anti-Jewish hatred began in biblical times 3,500 years ago with Egyptian slavery because there were too many Jews, in quotes. Then 3,300 years ago with the Torah, 10 commandments, 613 commandments. The hatred was because the Jews had too many laws. Number two, we go to the Middle Ages. the Jews were expelled in Europe in the years 1200 to 1500 because there were too many Jews. And then the Nazis grew up in the 30s and 35 to 45 and decided to denigrate and then kill the Jews because there were too many Jews. Number three, today, Jew hatred is a continuum of 3,500 years. It's now controlled by what I call the Reds, the Greens, and the Blues, the communists, Islamists, and globalists, which I call the new biblical pagans. And finally, number four, the U.S. and Israel must punish the Reds, the Greens, and the Blues for their incitement against Jews and Christians. And I think they can fall by dominoes as we go after Venezuela, Iran, and the drug cartels, and one by one, and hopefully many more dominoes fall as we go after anti-Semites once and for all.
Thank you very much for that information and for that insight. I think that it's important to understand that Venezuela has been overtaken by Hezbollah and Iran and has become a major satellite of anti-Semitism and genocide against the Jews, and it has helped to fund and radicalize anti-Semitism in the Southern Hemisphere. Thank you very much, Ken. And now we'd like to hear from one of the nation's most esteemed international jurists, a man who is fighting for the cause every day in the court of law, where it often really matters. I give you Richard Heidemann. Richard, tell us what you think.
Edwin, for many decades, there's been a process of what I call a legalization of hate. If we look at the buildup before the actual Shoah, before the Holocaust, the German government adopted legislation that disemboweled the Jewish community. That legalization of hate continued throughout with the support of government, the support of ministries, the support of the police, the support of the military, and the support of people in the community. With the establishment of the United Nations, the legalization of hate has continued. With the establishment of the Arab League, the legalization of hate has continued. We never thought we would see it in our lifetimes here in the United States or in Canada, but we are seeing it, and part of it is because of the legalization of hate. It has become all too acceptable for people who are public persons to make comments and get away with it, to speak out against Jewish people and think it's okay. They speak hate and they do it under the banner of freedom of speech. There's been too little pushback from our own community. We need to take a zero tolerance approach. We need to seek justice and accountability for our people. We need to hold those who spew hate accountable for creating what I call a culture of hate. And based upon that culture of hate, people are acting in a way they think is appropriate, and it's grossly inappropriate. We have to use not only the law, we have to use our voices. We have to speak up. We have to reach out. We have to write. We have to demand our full and equal rights as a religion, our full and equal rights as citizens, our full and equal Jewish civil and human rights.
You're absolutely correct, Richard. And this only confirms what we've been saying, what I've been saying, which is that we are in the beginning stages of the Holocaust, where Jew hatred and Jewish slander has become normalized. Thank you for everything that you're doing. And now we go to Phyllis Greenberg Heidemann. No discourse of this nature would be complete without her. And she's the president of the International March of the Living, which gathers in so many thousands each year on the March of the Living at Auschwitz. And so, Phyllis, we're not just going to mourn, we're going to warn. And what do you have to say?
First of all, I want to say thank you for inviting me, including me in this important discourse. Rather than reiterate what has already been so eloquently said by those who spoke before me, I would rather focus on what I believe, what we at the March of the Living believe, and that is the importance of memory. We need to remember, we need to know, we need to educate our young people, the next generation of all society, on where we've been, so that we can understand where we are today and where we want to, where we strive to be in the future. It is important that each of us become torchbearers of memory and lamplighters for the future. We are imbued with the responsibility to give voice to those who no longer have voice, to those on whose shoulders we stand, and understand that we must accept our communal, our social, our personal, our religious responsibility to preserve a better future, not just for the Jewish people, but for all people. It was not just us who suffered in the Holocaust. It certainly was the greater of mankind. We have a challenge before us to stand tall, not to just defend who we are, not to always explain who we are, but to defy those who try to define who we are. That's our job. Let us stand together as torchbearers of memory and define who we are. First, we have to know who we are, and that's what we at the March do. We try to educate the next generation and their parents, I might add, on who we are and why we must remember the past and what unchecked hatred, unbridled hatred can and will result in. So I invite all of you, now is the time. Now is the time for each of us to say, enough. We've had enough. We've given great amount to the world. We should be proud of who we are, and we must take a stand to protect the past and to preserve a better future for our people. We deserve it. Now is the time.
And you're so correct, Phyllis. This is the best way to fight back, is to fight back with the memory that we have and with the determination that we can muster. Thank you very much. I close with these imperatives. Never again, no way, not again, and we mean it. We mean it. This is Edwin Black.